Prospects to Pros, sponsored by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. My name is Nate Tice. I am your host today. And as always, joining me, the beast himself, Mr. Dane Brugler. How you doing? Now that we are almost into October, that we're starting to, your season, I know you're an NFL and football fan and college football fan overall, but your season is just creeping ever so closer. So how you doing today, Dane?
I'm good. Yeah, it's crazy. September's almost over. And this is one of the best times on the calendar because it's, we have fresh tape. We can react to these guys. We're learning about these guys. But no, it's good. I'm a little sore. We on Sunday morning we had my son's U10 soccer, the parents versus the team game.
Oh boy.
My first ever soccer game. I was baseball, football growing up. I never played soccer. But man, a full hour playing against those kids, I am sore. Like I haven't been in a while. So I'm feeling it, but we're playing a little hurt this morning.
When I was with the Falcons, we played like the equipment guys, some of the trainers, and then some of the scouts. We'd play football, but it wasn't even touch football. It was as soon as you catch it, you're down. Like, so there's no running after the catch.
Are you
So it's just
quarterback?
playing it. I was a quarterback always.
Okay.
But the quarterback could get rushed. And so it was scramble drill every single time. The first time I played that, and I was working out, but I was not moving. I got very bulky and big at that time. And that next day was one of the most sore I've ever been in my entire life. And it was just, I couldn't believe it, that pickup football game. But then we played soccer. And I think we found a soccer ball. We set up some cones and we just played like a little 4-on-4. We're terrible. And after that, my obliques were hurting. And I was like, because I was twisting and hurting. So I can empathize. And that was
you're not only you're going up and down, but the twisting of your body and the way for sure. I got a lot more respect for soccer players. Obviously you have to be well conditioned, but I mean, you have to be such a good athlete. So it's
such a good athlete.
Yeah.
So, do you ever have what? Okay. So I have a theory on this. I did not think I'd ever ask you this, but actually this is a great question, I think. Any football players do you think that could be good at soccer? Just one that comes to mind. I've always said Darren Sproles would be a world-class soccer player if he was born in like Spain. Like that.
Right,
I really think that. But what do you have, like one that just comes to your mind before we jump into prospects right now?
That's a good question. I mean, I think guy like Austin Eckler, he's so controlled with his movements, but he's got speed.
That's a good one.
He stands out. I mean, I don't know. That's the first name that came to my mind.
Any like 5'9", 5'10" running backs is kind of like where my mind goes. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. They're fast, but they're not. They're compact, not too bulky, but not gangly. Those running backs make sense.
I like that. See, you get it. Most people are like, oh, LeBron James, or they go like, oh, can you imagine if this tight end, if Travis Kelce, Gronk played soccer? It's like, no, their body types don't work. So you get it. You went straight for the 5'10" types because that's exactly it. But
growing up in Northeast Ohio, I mean, trust me, LeBron James playing football, I think through his sophomore year, I still just dream of the day where that could have been a reality. We could have seen him as a defensive end, tight end type of guy because he was the number one football recruit in Ohio as a sophomore, and of course, obviously, made the smart decision and went the basketball route. But I still dream of that, of what could have been in that alternate scenario.
The All-State as a sophomore in Ohio is that's pretty notable. That's a little different than Minnesota high school football when you're a sophomore getting All-State. I even when they had the lockout, they did like a flag football league against him and Kevin Durant, and LeBron took a slant and just took it to the house, and it was like, it was like a bigger, taller. It was 6'8" Odell Beckham. It was pretty different. Yeah, exactly. But getting into last weekend's games and really just the first month of the college football season kind of wrapping up, we had a juicy one on Saturday. A couple of fun games, but a really good one in the Midwest. Speaking of, we had Notre Dame and Ohio State, and this game was just littered with prospects and really in the trenches, especially on both sides of the ball. But any initial thoughts on Notre Dame, Ohio State? Where do you want to start off with? Because I know there's kind of these names that are on your big board that are up there, the Notre Dame offensive line and the Ohio State defensive line. But anywhere that you want to start with?
I think we got to start with, even Ohio State did get the win, but I want to start with Joe Alt, Notre Dame left tackle. I mean, he was fantastic. He did give up a few pressures. Tuimolotu was able to bully him a few times, but no sacks. He does such a good job of not getting stressed in his movements. He's tall. He's a little top heavy, but he's able to play with leverage. He's able to sit down, stay centered, play under control. So aesthetically, it's a little different, than an Olu Fashanu or some of these other tackles. But he's been better in pass protection this year than last year, which is exactly what I wanted to see. Look, he didn't give up a sack last year, so it's not like he was bad in pass protection. He was very good. But in terms of some of his movements, some of the body control things, he's still not the most explosive puncher. Yeah. But if you're going to play with that type of balance, you don't need to be. So I graded him as a mid first round pick coming into this year. Through 4 games, he's a top 10 pick based off of some of these improvements he's made in pass protection. So, and we saw that. I thought, even though, again, Ohio State did get the win, but one of the takeaways from this game for me, watching the tape, was Joe Alt. And again, Ohio State doesn't necessarily have the speed off the edge. So there's still a little bit of a question mark there against high-end speed if he's going to be facing a Dallas Turner or a Chop Robinson, those types of guys. But he is, every test that he's been given so far, he has aced so far through 4 games.
And even if there wasn't, Ohio State doesn't have that twitchy, speedy guy, that they've had in the past. It's like, this was actually even the type of matchup I wanted to see with Alt. And just because, he doesn't have that pop in his hands. How does a bull rusher, a guy that wins with strength like Ohio State has, how does he hold up in that? And how does he maintain? And I thought, I agree with you. I thought he's answering questions that I had about him. Like you said, he's such a good athlete. It's almost the classic finesse left tackle, that just wins with balance, wins with nice hand placement, and just wins with being a good athlete. And you can see the former tight end stuff. And I've seen the Brian O'Neill comparison to him. And I think he's kind of it's almost like a little better version of that, which is saying something. Yeah. And I'm with you. I was a little down on him. I was lower on him than I thought I would be. We talked about this going into the season. And I'm right there with you, where he has done nothing but just his stock is improving, and just how it's all just based off of play. And I thought this game was a perfect question mark for him to answer, and he answered it just like as well as I could have hoped.
And I know people roll their eyes when we talk about bloodlines and things like that, but his dad being an accomplished NFL offensive lineman, like I think that plays into this a little bit, because Joe grew up not necessarily watching his dad. His dad played before Joe was around, but just that understanding of, this is what my dad did, and so this is what I'm going to do. And just it's very natural for him with the movements, the body control, and he becomes more and more comfortable with every game. So Joe Alt, stock way up. Even on the other side too, right tackle Blake Fisher, I thought he played a strong game too. Probably a better run blocker than pass protector right now, but flash power in his hand. He's a smart player. So I thought both of Notre Dame's tackles played well against Ohio State.
Shout out to Joe Rudolph, their offensive line coach. I know Rudy pretty well. He was the tight end coach when I was at Wisconsin, and OC at Pitt when I was a GA there. But they show him on the sidelines. So I was like, oh, Rudy. It's like perfect fit for him. But
he's got some dudes. Well. There's no doubt.
Does.
Even with that said, Ohio State's defense, I thought they did,
I was
play well.
Ask you, and how their guys.
Who stood out for you on their defense?
Sawyer, my guy.
Yeah.
I'm just really liking how he's playing with it. Jack Sawyer, sorry. I think defensive end. I look at him as a kind of a useful player, utility player, a classic 3-4 Sam. Type, but nowadays you call him the Jack, and this is the role that can drop into coverage. This is the guy that rushed the passer. He can be used in different blitz looks. You just use him everywhere. I don't look him as a true first round type, but I really like him as like, I think we maintained where I had him before, that early second round. And I think he's doing some nice things. I just like the usefulness. I wouldn't say again that I'm overwhelmed by his stuff, but it's like, his baseline's so high. And if he can get with the right fit, right team that uses, like a Carolina or any of those defenses that use those kind of 3-down nickel fronts, the Titan mint stuff, I think he'd be a perfect fit for that. So he's a guy I just like. I just really, really like him, especially on that Ohio State defense.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, he was my number 35 player coming into the year, and I think that's pretty much exactly where I think of him now. Still in the same range. On the other side, I mentioned to JTT. Let's go with that.
I love it. Yeah,
Yes.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
There you go. Yeah, 90s reference. But I mean, he had a pretty good game too. He doesn't have that speed where he's just going to stress blockers around the corner, but he does have power, and he's a smart player. That sniffing out that screen pass in the final drive for Notre Dame. I mean, that was the game right there. If he doesn't make that little tip, the game's over. So, he played a smart game. He's not that overwhelming athlete. And so that clouds his draft projection a little bit, because you have to understand the type of player you're getting. And that's not necessarily a top 15 pick, but he's still a good player. And so it's like, I feel like almost because pass rushers go early, and people have been talking about him as a top 10, top 15 pick. Like, people are going to think he's falling when necessarily that's just not the case. It's understanding the type of player that he is. He's going to be an NFL pro for a long time, but he's just not that that pass rusher that's necessarily going to scare NFL offenses. Because he's not that type of athlete.
Yeah, he's a run first complementary pass rusher type. I actually am starting to come around maybe with like a George Karlaftis comparison. As they're tiered kind of similar in my mind. That type of complementary rusher, run first, maybe more to tap into, and as a pro, Karlaftis is playing well this year. But that type of guy, like a good starters type that maybe doesn't have the high end stuff that we picture. Oh, first round edge. 12 sacks, right? Gonna bend like Gumby, and it's like more like, no, just a bruiser type. That I'm with you on him, but I still like him. Again,
I just like him, smart, strong. I mean, like he's not a bad athlete by any means. He's just not that twitchy, get off. Yeah, right, exactly. So I'll tell you what, the Ohio State defensive player that really popped for me was Tyleik Williams, a defensive tackle. I thought he was their best defensive player Saturday night. After I watched the tape. Handful of pressures. He was terrific against the run. Should have had an interception on that great third down blitz they had, where he dropped in the coverage, took away the passing lane, took away the screen. And he played, I think, 86% of the snaps I wrote down. So he's a guy that played a lot of snaps, but still in the fourth quarter was given a ton of effort. And so Tyleik Williams, Michael Hall, the other defensive tackle, he played well too, but he gets more of the attention. Tyleik Williams is a really good player. And I thought, when you throw in that Notre Dame tape, he's one of those guys that you come away talking about more so than maybe some of these other Ohio State defenders.
Well, especially that they have depth at that interior spot that's significant, that he's playing so many snaps. The coach is like, no, he's got to be out there.
Right.
We got to keep that guy on there, especially someone that's so young. Anyone on the Ohio State's offense stood out for you? I know we are both fans of the tight end, Cade Stover, but did you watch Donovan Jackson at all, their guard? Or any Ohio State players stand out to you on the offensive side?
Egbuka comes through again. I mean, he just so natural finding space in the defense.
Outside Marvin Harrison Jr.
You're right. Well, it's funny when that injury happened. I texted one of my scout buddies who was in the press box, and I said, what's the vibe? And he said there was just an audible gasp when Harrison went down, and everyone was kind of buzzing about that. Thankfully, got back on the field. Doesn't appear to be anything long term. Thankfully, with Marvin Harrison Jr. But I mean, Egbuka, he shows why he is he might not be a top 10 pick, but he is going to be a very productive pro for a long time, because he can work inside, outside. He can find soft spots in zone. He can still has the athleticism to beat you in man. He's very reliable, dependable pass catcher. I mean, there's just so much to like there. Even if he might not have a true, alpha trait, he's not overwhelming with his size. He's not overwhelming with the speed, but he's good across the board. And I mean, those types of players. He is, I mean, but he can also be a Y. I mean, he can also, he can do so many different things to help different schemes, different offenses. So I tell you what, the wide receiver 2 battles this year are going to be bloody. The first receiver drafted after Marvin Harrison Jr., Keon Coleman was awesome. That touchdown he had was sick against Clemson and the noon slate of college football games. Odunze for Washington is awesome. I think he's in that conversation. Malik Neighbors from LSU has been going off. So the wide receiver 2 conversation is awesome. And I don't think there's necessarily a consensus. I don't think they're, but now or April. I think this is depending on the flavor of receiver you want. but Igbuka showed in this game why I think he belongs in there. Kate Stover, who you mentioned, he was 7 for 52, a lot of first downs. He can break tackles. He had a couple nice chips. I thought he did better as a blocker than we saw in the first 3 games, especially out in space. So, yeah, I agree. Ohio State's offense, Kyle McCord, we saw grow up there in that final drive. That was a lot of fun to watch if you're an Ohio State fan.
Yeah, Stover. Well, yeah, just first off with the receivers is that I think as opposed to maybe last year's class where it was kind of like, does anybody want this to be receiver 1 or receiver 2?
Right.
Does anyone want to go in the first round? You guys are just like bad. Not that like guys were playing bad, but it was kind of like, who's going to step up? It feels like just every week guys are stepping up and playing very well. Not only just eye tests, just statistically as well. It's not us convincing a guy that went for four catches for 50 yards. It's like, yeah, this guy's a first rounder. It's like, no, these guys are going for 150, 2 touchdowns. It's like, yes, it's kind of makes the argument a little easier. But I think that's fun. I like Stover. He's such a wild horse, and you could just tell that he is, man. But you can tell he's getting more comfortable and not playing. Last year, I always just felt like he was stiff because he was robotic, because he was thinking like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, break. 1, 2, 3. You could tell. Now you could tell he's getting some reps under him. But I think his stocks just keeps going up. I really like him just because it's just that athletic traits that he has.
Farmer Gronk. It's great.
Farmer Gronk. That's great. I like that. But yeah, we touched on the Ohio State defensive players and how maybe some of these edge guys are, maybe not the most overwhelming athletes or anything. And we talked a lot about how the offensive players in this draft are great. This is a very top heavy offensive draft and depth at a lot of major positions. But the defensive side right now, Dane, not a lot of guys kind of fighting their way that are really standing out, at least to me. There's a lot of good players, but maybe not those exceptional ones. But right now, who do you think is the best defensive player in the draft right now, as we sit here in September, or ones that are throwing their hat in the ring at the very least?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It feels like in most years we have somebody separate themselves from the pack by this time in the calendar. Last year, Will Anderson, obviously. 2 years ago, I think Aiden Hutchinson, even though he wasn't the first defensive player drafted, I think Aiden Hutchinson had kind of separated himself as, hey, I'm that guy. You can go back to Chase Young or the Bosa brothers. And so it's interesting this year. We don't have that guy. And I think, there's plenty of contenders. Florida State's Jared Verse, he's been really, really good versus the run, but no sacks yet. And the true impact plays have just been too infrequent with him. And you're waiting for him just to take over games. It's not like he's falling. I'm not saying that, but he hasn't necessarily separated himself as being like, hey, yeah, I'm a lock top 10 pick. That type. I mean, he's a very good player. He's going to start in the NFL at this time next year, but so far it's just been a little bit okay, not overwhelming. We touched on some of the cornerbacks last week. Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama is good, but is he top 10 good? Right. I think Clemson's Nate Wiggins is really, really underrated. He was great against Florida State. 5 targets, 0 catches allowed, had 1 pass breakup. He got injured the last play of regulation. Sounds like he'll be back soon. Doesn't sound like it was a serious thing. Chop Robinson from Penn State, man, this guy Cade McNamara for Iowa, the quarterback's going to have just nightmares of this guy. They couldn't block him. And it was fun because they would rush him. And I tweeted the 4-play sequence on Twitter with Chop. They lined him up over the A-gap, they lined him up for the center. I mean, he looked like Micah Parsons out there with some of the quickness to win in those small spaces, but then on the edge, that speed that he has, and then that forced fumble that he had, that swipe move was crazy. So Chop Robinson, it has to be in that conversation as well. And then I think if I have to put an answer right now to, okay, if the draft were tomorrow, the first defensive player drafted, I think I'm going Dallas Turner, Alabama. Yeah, he leads the SEC in sacks. He leads the SEC in pressures. He's really good versus a run. When they ask him to drop in space, he makes plays. He's not Will Anderson, but you can tell that he learned from him with the way he reads the game, his reaction quickness. And then late in that fourth quarter against Ole Miss on Saturday, he basically called game. He was dominant. He took it over. So, when you look at the production, he's the only player in college football with at least 4.5 sacks, at least 20 pressures. He's got 2 forced fumbles. Again, in the run game, he's grading really well. So if the draft are tomorrow, I think Turner would probably be my highest graded defensive player. And but it's I don't think it's a runaway by any means.
Right. I think that's exactly who I had. I was waiting for you to get to him, and I was like, oh man, he's low on Turner right now, but I figured you're
Yeah.
a great salesman, Dane. But no, I think the Chop Robinson shout out. You showed me the clip. You sent me that clip. That was it was all glimpses with him.
It's different
before.
than
It's
a lot
different.
of these guys. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where you have to get into some of the projection, but you have to still see some flashes and consistent flashes, and he's showing it. So yeah, but like he's such a different flavor than all these
Yeah.
other guys. They talk about Verse and we talked about the Ohio State guys like that. Those are those thumper types. Trice from Washington that are more the complementary players, good against the run, but okay against the pass. So, but when you're talking Chop Robinson and Dallas Turner, Turner is like he has length and it's not that you're not when you look at him, you're like, oh, he's not gonna be very strong, but he has some pop to his hands and obviously
Mhm.
has the frame that he can grow even more into. So he has that natural strength, that natural explosion, the length. And so that's the traits that you already want to start off with the edge guys. And honestly, he has the stats, but there's a bit of like, if you don't know, bet on the Bama player. Like in basketball scouting, I've come around on if you don't know, bet on the Kentucky player. And
Mm.
it's worked out a little bit, like pretty decently under John Calipari. But it's just, I think with Dallas Turner, there's a little bit of that, but he has the production. They use him in a different way. I watch Will Anderson getting used right now on Sundays, and he's looking great. But
Yeah.
he has his ears pinned back. What we want to see, I think Turner will get that same bump, even though he is already showing statistically and eye test. But I'm with you. He would be my guy right now. The only one that I have a true, top 10-ish grade on right now that
Yeah.
for these defensive guys.
Yeah, it's a really interesting pass rusher class. You mentioned, or we were talking about the Penn State, and I was watching that Penn State tape, and it goes play by play, and it gets down to 33 plays, and it stopped. I'm like, oh, why did it crash, or why didn't the rest of the plays load? Iowa offense only ran 33 plays in that game.
Yes.
Penn State ran
Smallest file
97.
size ever.
I've never seen such a lopsided play allocation. Like it's crazy. I thought for sure something crashed or all the plays didn't load, but no, I would just didn't run many plays, and so the snap counts will look a little different on that one.
Yeah, that was I used to hate because I'd have to make cutups when I was with the Falcons, and whenever I got like a Pac-12 or Big 12 offensive lineman, I saw like 5th round grade on a guy, and it's like, all right, I
Yeah.
gotta watch 4 games, and then it's like 120 plays, 110, 102, 110, and the guy sucks, and I just have to watch and make the cut up. I'm going through all these plays, and it's just like they're running everything at warp speed, no technique, and it was like it's nice when sometimes you get some of those Big Ten classics
Oh yeah.
to get through. It's only like an 8-minute film.
The work you did, you're doing the Lord's work though, because it is so much better watching the point of attack tape when you're
Yes, you knew what I was talking about, the POA tape. Yeah.
It's so much easier when you can watch that tape and you have all these plays that your guy's going to be involved with. Whereas if you're just watching the full game, there you could go 10 plays, 12 plays without your guy doing anything that's anything useful to you. So it's just the assistants doing all that cut up work of all these college players in each NFL facility. Those guys are invaluable.
But it's the 10,000 hours rule, like totally, like for film, like that was
Sure.
like you have to watch them, and so it's like
You
you
do,
just
oh, yeah.
you get 1,000 reps, 10,000 reps on just watching these guys, and sometimes it's stuck for at least a little bit for me. I'm hoping
It's important work because if you miss a play or if you don't include it in the cut up, or I mean,
why'd you use this game and not this game?
Exactly.
Like, well,
right.
When I made it, that game wasn't available. Like this is
why'd you include this? Why is this play in here? Why is this?
Why is this? Oh God, that would be the worst.
Right. Like you have to, kind of show your work and trust your own eyes.
He's releasing on a screen. I had to show him in space. Well, he didn't hit anybody, but you gotta see him open up a little bit, right? Okay.
Right.
All right, sure. Like, yeah, you just get a hard time. No, this ball wasn't even complete. Why'd you show it? Well, he had a good takeoff there. But any interior defensive lineman that that maybe at the top of the board or maybe the top half of the draft, or is it more just a lot of you see goodish at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Newton, Illinois, I think he's been the top guy, but I don't know that he's necessarily a top 10 pick, top 15 pick. I think he's more in the back half of round one, which is fine. He's
exactly.
where, think Kalijah Cansey, like, that range where
Yeah.
once you get to pick 16, 17, okay, we could be on Newton watch here, but he could fall to 25 or I think he's in that range because the size will be an issue. It's something that several scouts have already brought up to me, how he does not have a universal approval rating from team to team because he's just not a big guy. He's not going to be for everybody, but for the team that is okay with that, can look past the size, man, you're getting a disruptive player with him. He's so quick. Another guy that just doesn't come off the field, plays a ton of snaps. So Newton, definitely the guy that I would mention there. The rest of these guys, like, Mason Smith from LSU, Leonard Taylor from Miami, there's a lot of talent there, but I don't think any of these guys have separated themselves as, hey, I'm a lock first round pick. Definitely going top 25. Nothing like that, in my opinion.
Okay. I was just curious because he's the only one that I've kind of see rising to the top a little bit, but I just been kind of like keeping an eye. Maybe someone steps up. There is a lot of good, but yeah, just maybe not that overwhelming guy. Speaking of good, the Pac-12 just overall has been very entertaining, going out with a bang.
Tour.
Yes, it is. And it's like a classic Pac-12 kind of conference too. Not only good teams, but they're slinging it with some good quarterbacks. Where do you want to start? There's so many guys we can rattle off here and talk with here. So maybe want to go with some maybe guys that we haven't touched on before. So maybe Bo Nix from Oregon would be a great start. We've talked about it a little bit before, but maybe not highlighted. Do you want to start with Nix?
Yeah, that's a good call because we touched on Penix last week. We both see a really good college quarterback and maybe just a good prospect. Obviously, we've talked about Caleb and Shadur.
Yes, maybe I should list off of these 20 quarterbacks.
Seriously,
right now.
But no, it's great. You just look at the raw stats. The Pac-12 has 4 of the top 5 passing offenses in the country. With Washington State, USC, Colorado, and then Oregon, they're in the top 10. They're just a few spots later. So, Bo Nix is a good place to start. He could have came out last year. I think he would have been a day 2 pick. He decides to come back. He's been really good this year. He can use his legs. He's got a good arm. He's accurate. He's controlled. He's really good between the numbers. He can spread the ball out. So there's a lot of Bo Nix that you feel like translates to the next level. Right now, I think he's got to be the leader to be the first senior quarterback drafted. I don't think it's a runaway by any means, but I think he's been the one guy that I feel maybe most comfortable with. I'm really excited for that Oregon-Washington showdown we've got in 2 weeks. It's at Washington. That's going to be a ton of fun because 2 offenses that we know are going to put up points. Which defense can make a bigger stop. That a lot of that those tapes will be weighted maybe a little bit more for those 2 quarterbacks.
No, that's good to know. That all the really Washington, Oregon schools, they have a nice little round robin they could have with these 4 quarterbacks. No, but I think Nix has his feet have calmed down a ton, which has really helped his accuracy, and he just looks confident right now. He's that type of player anyways that kind of lives off confidence because he's gonna have some chaotic moments. Like he's gonna try some stuff and you have to live with it. But I think that now I understand the variance a little bit, that maybe sometimes before I'd be like, why'd you do that? And now I'm like, no, push it, screw it. You're the day to day or the snap to snap has been much better. So I've really liked what I've seen from Nick so far. How tall do you actually think he is?
Do I have what?
Do you have his officials?
Teams in the spring had him at 6.017. So 6'1" and 7/8.
Wow.
That's what they had in the summer, 225.
Yeah, I knew he was thick. I was picturing more like 6 foot and change. So that's interesting. He's pretty
10-inch hands. So good to check that box.
Good little size there. Yeah, good size there.
I know we haven't talked enough about him, but a guy I know for sure we haven't talked enough about is Cam Ward at Washington State.
Can't wait to talk about him.
He's so interesting because he was a wing T quarterback in high school.
Yeah.
Starts out in Incarnate Word, FCS level, blows up there, transfers to Washington State last year, and he was up and down. He's still very much learning the position, but man, he's been so much better this year, and he just looks more consistent. He looks more in control. The completion percentage is up over 10 percentage points, which I know is deceiving at times, but just whenever you make a jump 10 percentage points, you take notice of that. Like that's something that you can point to the tape and say, okay, I see why here. He's creating more explosive plays.
Yep.
The biggest thing is he's cutting down on the reckless tendencies. That was
Yep.
something that just no matter who you talk to, first thing that they would in the league when we would talk Cam Ward, first thing they would bring up interceptions or just what are you doing type of
What are you
plays.
doing? Yes.
Yeah, he's cut down on those, and he's actually played some decent defenses, Wisconsin, Oregon
Mhm.
State. So I like the elusiveness. He does a nice job creating some of those second chance throws. That's a strength to his game, but he doesn't rely on it this year, where I think he did last year. He's trusting his reads more this year, and he's
Yeah.
ripping it on time. So it's
Yes.
another example of a guy that has more reps under his belt, more experience, and you can tell he made it a point this year, this offseason, to be more repeatable with his
Yeah.
base, with his delivery, and that has translated to improved accuracy. So yeah, Cam Ward looks like a much better player than he did
Yeah.
last year. Reckless tendencies down, consistency up, and so if he continues on this track, the feedback coming into this year was from scouts, always a late round project. Coming into this year, that's what it was. But I mean, through September, he's definitely arrows pointing up for him.
I really like him. I remembered how I watched him last year because he played Wisconsin, so that's how it comes to my attention. And the Incarnate Ward transfer system going on with those quarterbacks says that it kind of piques my interest in some of those guys. Because
Sure.
was Zappy? Was he
Houston Baptist.
Houston Baptist? Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh man, the FCS Texas schools just getting me.
Right, right.
But no, but with Cam Ward, it was okay. He has the funky delivery, the little sidearm throwing style.
Mhm.
Okay, good strong runner. He's a good athlete, and then he's got some zip on that arm. Like he throws a tight
Mhm.
spiral, and I was like, okay. I didn't really think of him as a true draftable guy. Just more of it. Like I agree with the scouts. Was basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I've seen, I just watched 2 games on him, including Wisconsin and now the Oregon State game. Watched them both on all 22. Wow, just
Mhm.
calm in the pocket, no chatter with his feet. What you're just talking about, and maybe having an answer right away, and as opposed to just going like, "I'll figure it out." Like it
Right.
truly is going into, I know I'm throwing here. I'm going to move in the pocket and get there, and whipping that ball out on time. Plenty of arm strength, pushes for big plays, and that's why I'm glad he brought the accuracy stuff because it's not like he does. They do some dink and dunk stuff, but he's pushing the ball. He's
Yeah.
firing stuff down the field, which is just it's great. I really like him. I'm really like piqued me up. Like it really did. It really
Oh
got
yeah.
me excited. Like I want to keep watching him throughout this year. Actually kind of reminds me, I want to throw this comparison out to you. A little bit David Garrard, little
Hmm.
David Garrard there from East Carolina,
Interesting.
okay.
That's a
Yeah, old
name I have not
Jackster.
heard in a long
Yeah,
time.
I
Yeah.
bet. And that's my kind of comparison for him. Good, strong athlete, good arm, and just an improving. And yeah, the footwork, the calm footwork really stood out to me. Speaking of, how about the other side of the ball? Did with Oregon State's quarterback, the transfer from Clemson, Mr.
Mm.
DJ. I'm just going to call it DJU. I'm just not even going to try here because I have tried and I just can never get his name out right. But
Right.
who I thought made a great decision to transfer to Oregon State.
Yeah.
But any thoughts on him so far, as far as maybe breaking him down or just looking at him as a prospect?
I mean, he looks like he's just much more comfortable. I don't know
Oh, so
what
much
it
fun.
was at Clemson in that last year. He struggled to be comfortable and
Yeah,
confident, and now at this new place, it just feels like he's playing within himself a lot more.
yeah.
He's at that size. You feel good about him as a runner with his mobility. Let's see, what do I have him listed at? 6042 240. So he's a big boy.
Man,
But not a statue. I
I'm
mean, he can
shocked I'm
move.
taller than him. I actually thought he would be even taller than me.
Yeah.
I was 6045, so he's got
Okay.
me. I got him by a little bit, but that's that. Anyways, just good to know he's tall and big.
Yes. Yes. He's well put together. So
Yeah,
yeah, he's another guy that came in late round grades.
yeah,
But the way he's playing, it's like, okay, there's something here. He's if you're gonna play with this type of confidence, we need to revisit. And he's a 4th-year guy. He could always go back for another year,
I was gonna ask.
get even better. I don't, next year's quarterback class, who knows what it'll look like, but we know this year's quarterback class looks pretty crowded.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have a decision to make after this year.
I thought this was a great call by him to go from the Clemson offense, which is very elementary and has been
Mm,
for a while now, and it's a good and bad thing for them. But getting out of that, and like you're saying, the confidence and so much with these athletes, especially quarterbacks, is about confidence. But I thought the initial returns that are already paying off with being with an awesome coaching staff at Oregon State and a very real professional offense as far as terminology, those shifting and motioning, the actual reads he has to make. The early dividends have been the early returns, I should say, have already been very promising. But I'm glad you brought that up, that maybe he can return. I want to see him return for another year. Because I think just another year with this can really just like boom, 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 really launch him. And he has that eligibility to do that. I almost treat him like a redshirt freshman right now. Like I'm just trying to wipe out the Clemson days from him, just watch him like that. But yeah, he's been looking a lot better. He's a big, good athlete with a huge arm, and the polish is getting there, which I think is really, really encouraging.
Yeah, you still do see some of the San Diego State, that was a tough game for him. But
in the 5-second throwing motion.
Right, exactly. So it's not like we're saying, okay, he's a top 100 pick now. I mean, he still has a ways to go, but he's been a much more promising than what we thought he was at Clemson.
He was basically off the board for me after Clemson. Undrafted, 7th round undrafted. Well, okay, maybe take a shot out. But now it's like that. Exactly. He's looking more like that 4th-ish round type. But I want to see another year and just hit more that he can clean up, because he still has more to go. Even anybody else in the Pac-12? We have Cam Rising from Utah.
We haven't seen him yet because he's coming back from the ACL.
Injury, right? Okay.
But he's one of those Gardner Minshew types, where it's just exactly nothing about him necessarily screams NFL quarterback in terms of just when you see him out there, but he wins. He's tough. He last year, I don't know if he was planning on coming out or not, but he gets injured in the Rose Bowl against Penn State. So it's okay, I'm coming back. We're waiting for him to be healthy before we really see him this year. But I mean, he's a guy that has so much, moxie to him and that's something that scouts bring up with him. He's just got that it factor. And so he had draftable grades from a lot of teams this summer. And as long as he's healthy, he's, and so what? Caleb, Bo Nix, Shadur, Penix, Cam Ward, DJU, Cam Rising. That's 7 quarterbacks right there that theoretically would be drafted in this draft class from just one conference. I mean, it's crazy. We'll see how it all shakes out, how many of these guys actually declare, who goes back, but it's a pretty impressive group of quarterbacks for sure.
Yeah, and even speaking of Caleb, so like that's like you're even saying too, there's depth, there's guys at the top, there's guys that are ascending, there's seniors, there's every single type. But if you're at the top of the draft, the 2024 draft, there's a couple teams that have a lot of draft collateral and might be looking at a quarterback at the top of the draft. But you got the Caleb sweepstakes or the Caleb Mabe sweepstakes, whichever one, or the Marvin Harrison Jr. sweepstakes, or the Olaf Ashadu sweepstakes. But this draft order right now, as it's kind of starting to shake out, I know we're only 3 weeks into the NFL season, but what are you kind of envisioning right now as far as maybe this draft order, who's going to go up there, and maybe just who's pining for that Caleb sweepstakes?
I mean, if we're going to try and forecast, the top 5, we got to start with the Bears, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not only how bad they look, but also they have the pick, the 0-3 Panthers. They have their first round pick. So right now there's 4 0-3 teams. One's the Bears, one's the Panthers. So if you're the Bears, as ugly as this first 3 weeks have been, if you're forecasting moving forward, you got to have at least some optimism. That I think over the summer we talked all about the Cardinals. Oh, they could get Caleb and Marvin Harrison Jr. with their 2 first rounders, 1 and 2. That's a realistic outcome for Chicago. They could have 2 top 5 picks, draft a quarterback, and then either Harrison or maybe even Fashanu if they want to get that tackle. So, and obviously that changes things pretty quickly for that organization. The Justin Fields thing is interesting. It's honestly kind of reminds me a little bit of the Sam Darnold, where clearly Sam Darnold wasn't getting a ton of help. But a lot of it was on him too in New York. Same thing with Fields in Chicago. Like clearly he's not getting a ton of help, but clearly it's a lot of it on him as well. And it'll be hard to quit Justin Fields because the next place he goes, there will still be a lot of believers that say, "Oh, they'll figure him out," or they'll be. And same thing with Darnold. So it kind of reminds me of that situation where, I mean, even right now, if Brock Purdy went down and is out for the year, and Sam Darnold's the quarterback, almost a lot of people, including myself, and I'm sure even including you, would say, "Oh yeah, 49ers, they're making the playoffs. Yeah, they're fine." So yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting with
Watch
Fields
preseason.
how
I was freaking out during the preseason. I was like, look at this. I still believe.
So and I think Fields will be the same thing, where
Yeah.
no matter how the rest of the season plays out, if the Bears do decide to move on, there will still be plenty of believers that say, "Oh, we'll see where he ends up. We'll see, where the landing spot is, and we'll see how it works out."
Yeah, it definitely needs a fresh start. We talk about other positions and everything, and just everything just overhanging that franchise right now. It's
It's rough.
our producer Beller and co-host are both Bears fans, so it's like even if I want to ignore it, we're going to talk about it because it's a big part of their lives. But I think too is that it also stands for how good Caleb Williams and Drake May, at least in my mind, are. That it's that a guy that even I was high on, Justin Fields. I'm like, yeah, I would take these two over him. Like, even if I were like, oh, there's still talent there and everything, these two are a different tier of quarterback prospect than even Fields was. And I liked Fields a lot. Still, I'm one of those that's like, I just want to see him at a fresh start. But it's going to be, but these teams at the top, and then also just the fact that there's two top quarterbacks, a top tackle, a top receiver. There's so many great constellation prizes. Sometimes when it's a tank for insert name here, like kind of season, it's like, okay, that's the grand prize. Oh, we didn't get it. Now we have the third pick and we still need a quarterback. Oh God, this year it's like, oh, just get in the top 5, get in the top 4, like, and we can do this. So I think it's gonna be very interesting, especially once November, December start kind of creeping towards.
And I 100% believe that if Caleb Williams was in last year's draft, the Bears, they don't trade out. They stay at 1 and they take Caleb Williams. I 100% believe that. And some people think they should have anyways. They should have stayed at 1 and drafted a quarterback, whether it was Stroud or Bryce Young or whoever. And I mean, I think they made the right move because, from a PR perspective, okay, you gave Fields the chance, didn't work out. Okay, so you're gonna have fewer fans off of your back, because if you drafted a quarterback at 1 with Fields still there, it would have been, the fans would have revolted, or half the fans at least. Now I think more fans are like, okay, it's time to move on from Fields, try something new. But not to mention, okay, you had a chance to you added a tackle in the top 10 last year. You have another first-round pick next year that's probably going to be a top 10 pick. That could be a receiver, another offensive lineman, whatever. So you're just more equipped to go with the quarterback, whether that's Caleb or Drake May, or if they end up winning a few of these games and they fall out of this the 1-2 range, and they have the ammo to go up and get one of those guys. So it's really interesting. Looking at these other 0-3 teams. Minnesota, I mean, they're 0-3, but I mean, they've lost each of those games by 6 points or less. So I don't, they're not, I don't think they're making, I don't think they're making the playoffs, but I mean, they're too good to finish in the bottom 7
how I look at them
of the standings. Denver's also 0-3. But again, the ass kicking against Miami notwithstanding, I don't think they finish with a top 5 pick. So, but then you look at the 1 and 2 teams, the Raiders, the Jets, Cardinals, Texans. Cardinals have the Texans pick. So, I mean, you have some of those 1 and 2 teams that look like, all right, I'm interested to get, because we've talked a lot about Caleb and Drake May, but I don't know if we've talked about Arizona specifically. If you're the GM of that team, and let's say you have the number 2 pick, Caleb goes 1, May is sitting there at 2, are you finding a way out of the Kyler deal? And you're going with Drake May? I
think so. I think with this regime and what they're trying to do right now too, I think they're just trying to go total fresh start with everybody. That's why they even the Isaiah Simmons trade and okay, Budda Baker's not playing. Like, they're just doing all these little things where it's like they're playing the guys they want to play, and it almost feels more like a college team when a new staff gets there, and it's like, man, this team had 18 old college team before NIL and all the transfers and everything. They have 18 transfers, guys transfer out. They had 25 guys signed, and actually they only took 7 of them. Like, they just, it's like this hodgepodge kind of team that they're putting together. They're really well coached. Another initial returns kind of thing. What's going on in Arizona, I'm very optimistic about. I broke it down on YouTube this week, but I would absolutely be looking to get out of it. And there's plenty of teams that want a quarterback that would for sure take Kyler off your hands. And so now you can build up more draft capital on top of the stuff you already have, get a fresh quarterback, get another building block. They can be set up nicely no matter kind of how it shakes out this season.
Yeah. I think the other interesting one is the Jets. I'm surprised how much pushback I've gotten from Jets fans on Twitter about drafting a quarterback in the first round. I mean, obviously hopefully Rodgers comes back, but it's
Right.
such a crapshoot coming back from that injury. And to say he's going
40-year-old
to
off an Achilles. Yeah, that's
right, and he's
it's
going to
tough.
start 17 games next year. Like
You're right.
it's tough. And even if let's say he does, great, that's awesome. You have your quarterback waiting in the wings because Rodgers is only going to play,
Right.
X 1 more year, 2 more years at the most. So I mean, we're sitting pretty nice with a quarterback because if Rodgers is playing and he's playing well, you're not going to have a top 10 pick. So
Right.
while you are picking in the top 10, you get your guy. I don't know. I'm surprised there's been pushback on that. I think it's if you have a chance to draft a quarterback that you believe in. I mean, obviously the Zach Wilson experiment is not going well at all.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't look like he has any confidence out there. The game is moving way too fast for him.
Yep.
It's just hard to see that fixing itself throughout the course of this year. I just don't see it happening.
I think that's how you just laid it out, like that timeline too. Like, and Rodgers doesn't seem like he wants to go out on this note. He's like, I'm trying to play this year and everything. So, but that's it's setting yourself up for future success. Not having to play a guy right away is huge too. And just even if the guy is talented and everything, just getting to sit and just chill out. Like Jordan Love got to sit for whatever three years, but how he looks is wildly different than what he looked at Utah State. And it's how calm he looks. And it's so nice when they can just get rep after rep after rep. Yes, you want the live action reps, but it still pays dividends, I think, anyways. So I like you said with that timeline. And also, it was like drafting a tight end this year. It's like, oh, let's draft a tight end in the second or third round. It's such a loaded class that it's like the tight end 4 or 5 or 6 could be a tight end 1, 2 in other classes. So it's, that's not, of course, Brock Bowers comes out this year. So, but it's one of those kind of things that if I get the quarterback 3 in a class like this, that could be a quarterback 1 in other classes. Maybe not, but we'll see how this shakes out and everything.
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating, especially just who has the picks and what they need to. It's going to be very interesting. And
well, we didn't see the Cardinals.
Like available on this on the trade block. It's going to be, there's so many sliding doors that might happen this offseason.
We didn't see the Cardinals beating the Cowboys on Sunday. So, I mean, who knows? Cardinals might rip off 4 wins here in the next, 6 weeks. Who knows? It's the NFL. And that does make, look, tanking's not a thing. It's not. In the NFL, tanking is not a thing. Now, once you get to the final game of the year, maybe there's some times when, there's some stuff that goes on. But in September, October, November, no, there's nothing like that happens. But so it will be interesting when you have this type of quarterback class, and especially the 2 guys at the top, how it all shakes out.
Yeah. Tanking is not a thing. It's
no.
Tape is your resume for coaches and players. So that nobody wants to tank their resume on purpose. Okay. But speaking of NFL so far, actually, the first 3 weeks, there's been plenty of guys standing out offense and especially on defense. But we wanted to highlight some rookies so far. Let's first start with the defenders to start. We're also going to talk about a couple speedsters that just been fantastic so far this year, but defense first. Brian Branch, one of your picks for defensive rookie of the year, has been looking as high and as good as I hoped he could have been, as probably as you hoped he could have been. He is showing that already, making plays, TFLs, pick sixes. Brian Branch, anything you want to add to here and just like what you've seen so far, or is it just exactly what you would hope to expect out of him?
He's so good. This is what you saw at Alabama. This is what we're seeing now in the pros. I mean, I love that he doesn't, his tackle numbers are great. They're all solo, every single one. And there's not I think there's 1 missed tackle, which was, I think, on the edge. So like he's a really good run defender. He's really good tackler in space. He's doing a nice job in coverage. There's so much things that you can do with him. And he's not a big guy. No, he didn't run a fast 40. Just throw in the tape and tell me why you don't like this guy, because he was such a good college football player, and it's no surprise at all. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody what he's doing in Detroit. Him falling as far as he did just didn't make any sense.
Nope.
And we talked about this in Kansas City when the draft was going on. Just like, what is going on here? Like you're going to overlook some outliers in the first round, but then let a guy like this fall to the mid-second. Like, it just didn't make any sense. And
Football player.
Yeah, but if you're the Lions, I mean, good for you to get him where you did.
Oh, and he's already just the impact he's making. You can just feel it. And another kind of feisty defensive back that actually did go high. Devin Witherspoon is getting his first kind of taste of NFL action. Anything you've seen from Witherspoon? I mean, he's been feisty is the best way to put it. The guy's mindset fits perfectly in Seattle. But what have you seen so far with Witherspoon, Dean? No, Dane.
I mean, he's so aggressive. I mean, the way you set it up, he's so the demeanor, the competitiveness that he plays with. I mean, it's almost a fine line of, okay, reel it back just a little bit, or you're gonna get more attention from officials with the way you play. But no, it's the way he plays, and he's not a big guy. He's 5'11 and a half, 180 pounds. Like, he is not a big guy, but he plays big, and that shows up consistently. It showed up consistently at Illinois. And so far, it's showing up consistently with him as a pro. So, it'll be interesting with these first round corners this year, because Christian Gonzalez has been awesome. We talked about how it was weird. He fell to the 17th pick. Emmanuel Forbes was taken one pick ahead of him. And Forbes has been good. I mean, he's had a few low moments, but he's been good. Corner so volatile, especially when you talk about rookies. But it'll be interesting to track, especially in Deontay Banks too, but especially those first three guys with Witherspoon, Gonzalez, and Forbes, just tracking these guys throughout their rookie years, see how they perform up and down. No, that'll be, and Witherspoon, the way he played on Sunday was really impressive.
Any defensive front players that stood out to you, or the front seven guys outside the DB room that have stood out to you so far this year?
How about Thule?
Yeah,
Chargers. He was outstanding over the weekend. Tui Pelotu. He is a guy that I wasn't as super high on, just because he's a good athlete, but not a great athlete. He doesn't have a great get off. He's too willing to attack blockers and let them get into his frame, but he wants to fight you, and that
magnet for contact was my note.
Yeah, he is, exactly. And so
usually we say running backs are like that, but he is a magnet for contact.
And that worries you going up against NFL blockers, right? Yeah. But at the same time, because he has natural power, because he has just this motor that doesn't quit, shock in his hands, and he's got an instinctive nature to the way he plays, that usually ends up winning in the end. And it certainly did against Minnesota. They couldn't block him at times. So he just looked outstanding on Sunday. But yeah, he's going to be interesting to watch, because I graded him as more of a early to mid third round pick, and the Chargers took him, I think, late 2, so earlier than I would have taken him. But he's the way he's played so far, it certainly looks like the Chargers were right.
Yeah, and they needed it so bad. They had no edge depth. They also needed guys that could just
It's weird to say that with a team with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa.
But
yeah,
nothing after that. Yeah,
right.
So they just needed a guy, and the fact that he can just help out against the run too, because that's such a weakness. And that's it. Usually it's the spine of their defense that's that weakness, but just having anybody that can just set the edge and do those types of things helps so much for them. But yeah, he's been a nice complementary player for them.
He was one of the youngest players in the draft too. I mean, he just turned 21 this month. So he is a guy that you feel like, okay, yeah, best football is definitely ahead of this guy. What about on offense? Devin A-Chain, or I don't know, he's going by A-Chan now or whatever it is. But
yeah, what happened with that?
I don't know.
All of a sudden, I was like, wait, I thought I had this name down.
Yeah, well, it's weird how guys go their entire college careers going by one name, and then they go to the NFL and they decide, no, I'm Mitchell Trubisky now. It's just kind of weird how some guys do that. But yeah, apparently it's Devon A-Chan now. Yeah, I think Adam Schefter reported that's what he wants to go by now. But I mean, I don't know. Look, I can go back to Kansas City when we're doing the live draft and Miami drafts him, and it's just like, well, duh. I mean, this is I almost every second round mock I did, I had him going in the second round to the Dolphins, and Dolphins ended up getting him in the third round. And it's just the perfect fit of what an offense wants to be, what a player is. And he was banged up in the preseason. He was inactive week 1. It was like, okay, all those concerns about his size, like, this isn't good. Okay, by week 3 already, not worried about that, because that was the thing. He was 188 pounds at the combine, and I don't know what his frame is. He closer to 200 pounds now? Maybe I don't know, but all I know is it doesn't really matter if you can't get your hands on him. And he's
Right.
so quick, so fast. His speed, his vision, and the way that he works the two together, it just is so much fun.
I don't think you need me to even say it, but because they put up 70 points, but like Mike McDaniel's really good at what he does.
You don't say.
Yeah, and Achan, 4chan, Achan, what I really liked about him, even watching him at my initial exposure, I think we talked about this in Kansas City, was that I was watching Isaiah Spiller and then
Mm,
watching Achan go after him. I'm like, this guy, and
a little
that everyone's
different.
like, oh, that's the track guy, that's the speedster. I'm like, he might be a better running back, like just as
Yes.
far as vision and tempo and it's setting up blocks. It's just that he's a buck 80 and change. I still think he's like 184. Like that's what he
Yeah.
looks like. But you get Mike McDaniel is going to use them in very smart ways, put them out in space, and not just in gimmicky ways, but even it's in some gimmicky ways. Like he did an end around to him with Achan lined up as a receiver and just getting them toss plays, just out in space, out in space. We're not going to run him between the tackles, even though he does have good vision. But man, it just makes so much sense that he went there. That team is just so fast and just everybody's out in space. It just feels just so different than everybody else. It's so much fun to watch. And it kind of was the so far it's been, or especially week 3, it was like the season for the undersized receiver or
Mm,
or the
hmm.
week of the undersized receiver. Other rookies that stepped out, Tank Dell. I can't remember what your grade was on Tank Dell. Was it he ended up going in the 3rd round, but he was a Senior Bowl standout as well.
Yeah.
But what did you think about Tank Dell when he was coming out?
I I don't love small receivers.
I
That's
don't
kind
either.
of that is one of my I need to stay open minded to small receivers. And I gave him a late 3rd round grade.
Yeah.
I was a late 3rd, early 4th. So I
I had a 4th
didn't
on him. So okay.
yeah, I
So
didn't
I was right there with
dislike
you.
him, yeah, necessarily, but he was a guy that he just worried me at that size. But I tell you what, watching him live at the Senior Bowl, no one could cover him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so far he's getting open for CJ Stroud, and Stroud's been hitting them. So yeah, that's been fun to watch. And also Marvin Mims with the
Yeah.
Broncos, another guy who what you loved about him was the straight line stuff, and it could be verticals, it could be crossers, it could be drag, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever you're asking him to run. Don't ask him to make more than one cut, but
Yeah.
if he
Let
can
him
do
go.
it and do it at a high, yeah. But it'll be interesting how his role develops now within that offense, because you have to play him more if you're Denver, and it'll be interesting just to see how that goes, because he's got a lot of juice, tracks the football really well. I mean, he's too good to keep on the sidelines. He makes your offense better.
Yep.
So how his role evolves throughout the year will be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, Sean Payton and how Russell Wilson's just such a good deep ball thrower and always has been. So now you're
Right.
getting a guy that's like it's kind of his muse. He's great with these type of guys, the Lockett types. Lockett has a little bit more, way more polish and technique than Mims does right
Hmm.
now, but that same kind of deep ball attacker. Yeah, he's been really fun. And again, he's averaging a cool 28 yards a catch. Always, it's great.
That's
Old
it.
school Kelly Campbell numbers. If you remember Kelly Cam, but just go get vertical and go and launch that ball deep. But also just not even rookies, undersized speedsters like Tutu Atwell is
Mm,
healthy and the Rams are using him
yeah.
perfectly. Calvin Austin for the Steelers. A lot of the guys that it's very hard for me to get you out of the 4th round if you're under 180. It's I mean
Right.
very very hard. You have to be very your route running better be pristine. But seeing all these speedsters just really have kind of a role so far in the league has been really fun. It's always fun when there's more speed.
Yeah, and it's obviously speed kills, but we've seen plenty of speed guys not be able to cut it,
Oh yeah,
and so it's always interesting as we know he's fast. How does it apply in football context? And a guy like Marvin Mims, he was the only receiver in college football last year with at least 45 catches to average 20 yards or better per catch, and so this is what he did in college at Oklahoma, and so far it's what he's doing. It was such an interesting pick for the Broncos because they didn't have that 1st round pick. They didn't
yeah,
have those early picks, and they decide all the needs on that team. You didn't necessarily point to receiver as being
yeah,
one of them, and they
right.
drafted Marvin Mims, and it was like, okay, this is interesting. Like what, you bypass an offensive lineman, you bypass, to draft this receiver, and with Tim Patrick going down, and Jerry Judy's been banged up, and so how Marvin Mims, I just really interested to see how that whole thing plays out.
Only I looked this up because this is just it's not like we're just being sizist or anything. It's there's historical precedence for this. There
Yeah.
I looked up this year. So there's only So sub 170-pound quarterbacks, so 169 pounds or less. There's only been 3 receivers ever to have multiple 800 or more yard receiving years. 3 ever to have 800 yards or more twice.
Is Devontae Smith part of that?
He's 170. So he's 171.
Okay.
So he actually broke. Even if I won 170, he wouldn't be on there. But it's Anthony Carter, Stacey Bailey, and James Jett.
Okay.
That's it. Those are the 3. And
right.
So that's why it's like, even if these guys are talented, they have speed, they do nice things, they are getting used very well. It's just that you're betting on outliers here. Even if
Tank Dell was 165 pounds at the combine. Yes. So yeah, like he falls in that
like 158.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it is tough because it's
you want to respect the speed, respect the talent, but it's hard to bet on their health just because this NFL is just big and fast.
Well, and not just that, but play strength and, you know, being able to get off press, being able to win some of those contested windows. And so, it is something that you have to, and this is why teams have different thresholds for different positions and different schemes. And you pay attention to that, but it's also important to be open-minded to, you know, what does he look like on the field and how does the contact, you know, this upcoming weekend, we've got Devontae Smith going against Emmanuel Forbes, 2 of the thinnest, outliers we've seen, you know, and especially when talking about first round picks, both were top 20 picks. And Emmanuel Forbes was 165 pounds as a senior in high school. He was 166 pounds at the combine. You know, he's just a guy that's what he is. And he's over 6. He was 6'1". So it's not like he's 5'9" and like, you know, like, right. Tank Dell is 5'8.5" and 165 pounds, whereas a guy like Emmanuel Forbes is almost 6'1" and 166 pounds. So that's really interesting. And then, with Devontae Smith, obviously, as slender as he is, that hasn't been a problem for him so far.
He just that is still the highest graded hands I've ever given somebody. It's Devontae Smith. Just I love him so much. I've said this is that because I usually defer to size and speed, but it's like if I really like an undersized guy, it's kind of like listen a little bit. I should listen to myself. It's like, why? Right. Oh, like even like a guy like Jordan Addison, who I should be usually throwing out. It's like, I just like this tape so much. I just liked him so much. And he's looking perfect to see right now in that Vikings offense. But
he was 173 pounds at the combine. I mean, that was an eye opener. Like, whoa, okay.
Whoa. Yeah. I knew he wasn't big, but not
right.
That small. That was a surprising one still.
Right.
So you already mentioned, Devontae Smith and Emmanuel Forbes matchup for the NFL, but we got prospect matchups maybe for week 5 of college football. Who are you keeping an eye on this weekend, Dane? And who maybe should if the viewer, the listener is checking this weekend slate out, who should they keep an eye on? Who should they spotlight?
I'm interested in see Duke. Notre Dame's going to Duke, and College Game Day will be there. That'll be fun. But Riley Leonard, Graham Barton, see how that offense holds up against Notre Dame's defense. Graham Barton's so interesting. I don't know that he's going to end up in the first round because I think he's a guard first and foremost.
I think so too,
but at the same time, his tape's been really good this year. I mean, I think he's a plug and play NFL starter. He's just a rock solid player. But I want to see him against Notre Dame, and then Riley Leonard too. He's still in the mix. As we it's hard when you talk about these guys. We overreact, underreact, whatever after each game. But to see Riley Leonard go up against a Notre Dame defense that is a pretty good unit. They held Ohio State to 17 points, and it's interested to see how Notre Dame bounces back. Jalen Daniels, quarterback Kansas, going up against Texas. That'll be a good one. Eager to see that one. Texas has a pretty good defense. Defensive front's really good. Jalen Ford, the linebacker, is outstanding, especially in coverage. So definitely interested to see how that one plays out. LSU and Ole Miss, Malik Neighbors going up against Deontay Prince. Malik Neighbors is a first-round pick type of player. Deontay Prince is a top 125, top 150 prospect. So that'll be fun. And then, of course, we got Colorado and USC. See how, obviously, the quarterbacks with Caleb and Shadur, but plenty of other guys in that one too. So, it's this weekend's matchups aren't as juicy on paper as last week, but college football never disappoints. It always comes, there's always some barn burners and some close games and plenty to talk about next week.
I've been very much enjoying getting my Saturdays to watch college football again and making sure that I told my wife this year, it's like, hey, I'm going to be watching. Saturdays aren't as free as they used to be. It's
Right.
been great. It's been great though. Like even just I was watching North Carolina Pitt and then watching Drake May and throwing lefty and doing all
Casually
that.
left-handed, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad he tweeted it because oh man, he made a couple throws that game I was all excited about. But just even watching
Yeah.
that game and just the chaotic nature of the first half, I was like, oh, college football is awesome. It's like I love this. It's just block punts, field goals, missed kicks, guys dropping balls, they're wide open, guys tip balls, throwing lefty. It's the best.
It'll be with North Carolina. It'll be interesting to see how long they can take this because they're not a great team, but
Yeah,
with Drake May, you could be you can keep winning football games. They're 4-0 because of Drake May. So
I know he's
even
carrying
though,
them.
yeah, the stats don't look outstanding, he's still a 5-4 touchdown interception
Yeah.
ratio, and he's averaging under 300 yards passing a game.
They are the kings of getting inside the 5, and then they just hand the ball off. Like, if
Yeah.
you were playing in that like, Michael Leach used to pad those stats perfectly. He used to be the
Right.
best. He just tried to or Peyton in Denver, they would just run receiver screens so he'd get the passing touchdowns. It's like Drake May's the opposite. They get inside the 5, they're like, hand it off, hand it off, hand it off. No touchdowns for you.
Yeah. It'll be interesting with just to see how because the ACC feels like it's pretty competitive this year. I mean,
Yeah.
even though Clemson lost, they're 2-2. They're still a good team. Florida State is looking awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be fun to see how the rest of the year how that plays out.
Absolutely. Well, I think that will do it for Prospects to Pros this week. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you again to Dane. So much great information. I that's what's great about this college football season, kind of chugging along and stuff gets highlighted. But thank you all for joining us. We have so much great stuff here on the Athletic Football Show. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We got plenty of videos up there as well. Join us for our live streams Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night. I think that's it. Enough words for today. Thank you guys for joining us. I'll see y'all next time. See you guys next Wednesday.